The Byzantine-Georgian Wars were a series of conflicts fought during the 11th century and were mainly focused on several strategic districts in the Byzantine-Georgian Armenian marchlands. Most of these lands were granted by Emperor Basil II to the Georgian Kuropalates David III of Tau in reward for his crucial assistance in the struggle against the rebel general Badis Sklius. However, David supported another unsuccessful noble revolt led by Badis Phocas at the end of the 980s. As a result, David was forced to make Basil II the legatee of his princedom. This agreement destroyed a previous arrangement by which David had made his adopted son, Bagrat III of Georgia, his heir. When David died early in 1000, Basil added his inheritance, Tau, Theodosiopolis, Phasian and the Lake Van region with the city of Manzikert, to the Byzantine Empire. The following year, the Georgian prince Georgian, natural father of Bagrat, marched to take David's inheritance, but was thwarted by the Byzantine general Nicephorus Auranos, Dux of Antioch. Despite these setbacks, Bagrat was able to become the first king of the unified Georgian state in 1008. He died in 1014, and his son, George I, inherited a long-standing claim to those territories in Tau which were in Byzantine hands. Georgian campaigns of Basil II. George I invaded and occupied Tau and Phasian in 1014. Basil, involved in his campaign against the Bulgarians, sent an army to expel the Georgians. This army was decisively defeated, but a Byzantine naval force occupied the Khazar ports in the rear, that is, to the northwest, of George's dominions. Once the annexation of Bulgaria was completed in 1018, preparations for a larger-scale campaign were set in train, beginning with the refortification of Theodosiopolis. In the autumn of 1021, Basil, ahead of a large army, reinforced by the Varangian Guards, attacked the Georgians and their Armenian allies, recovering Phasian and pushing on beyond the frontiers of Tau into Inner Georgia. King George burned the city of Oltashi, keep it out of the enemy's hands, and retreated to Kola. A bloody battle was fought near the village Sharimni at the Lake Palakizio on September 11 and the emperor won a costly victory, forcing George I to retreat northwards into his kingdom. Plundering the country on his way, Basil withdrew to winter at Trabzond. Several attempts to negotiate the conflict went in vain. In the meantime, George received reinforcements from the Kakhetians, and allied himself with the Byzantine commanders Nicephorus Phocas and Nicephorus Xiphias in their abortive insurrection in the emperor's rear. In December, George's ally, the Armenian king Sennacherib of Aspurukhan, being harassed by the Seljuk Turks, surrendered his kingdom to the emperor. During the spring of 1022, Basil launched a final offensive, winning a crushing victory over the Georgians at Sfindax. Menaced both by land and sea, King George handed over Tau, Phasian, Kola, Artan and Javakheti, and left his infant son Bagrat a hostage in Basil's hands. Georgian civil wars. On the death of his father, Bagrat returned home to become King Bagrat IV of Georgia in 1027. However, a powerful party of Georgian nobles led by Bagrat's distant cousin Dmitry, son of Georgian of Klarjeta, refused to recognize his suzerainty, and invited a Byzantine army in 1028. The Byzantines overran the Georgian borderlands and invested Kildekari, a key fortress in Trialeta province, but failed to take it and marched back on the regent Shavsheta. The local bishop Saba of Tibeti organized a successful defense of the area, forcing the Byzantines to change their tactics. The Emperor Constantine VIII then sent Demetrius, an exiled Georgian prince, who was considered by many as a legitimate pretender to the throne, to take a Georgian crown by force. This incited a new tide of the rebellion against Bagrat and his regent, Queen Durga Mariam of Aspurukhan. In the end of 1028, Constantine died, and the new emperor Romanus III recalled his army from Georgia. Queen Mariam visited Constantinople in 1029 and negotiated a peace treaty between the two countries. Early in the 1040s, a feudal opposition staged another revolt against Bagrat IV of Georgia. The rebels, led this time by Lipperete IV, Duke of Kildekary, requested a Byzantine aid and attempted to put Prince Demetrius on the throne. Yet, despite their efforts to take a key fortress, Atene went in vain. Lipperete and the Byzantines won a major victory at the Battle of Sajareta in 1042, forcing Bagrat to take refuge in the western Georgian highlands. Soon Bagrat headed for Constantinople and, after the 3 years of negotiations, achieved his recognition by the Byzantine court. Back to Georgia in 1051, he was able to force Lipperete into exile. Actually, this was the end of the Byzantine-Georgian conflicts. Aftermath. Despite the territorial losses to Basil II, the Georgian kings succeeded in retaining their independence and in uniting most of the Georgian lands into a single state. Many of the territories ceded to the empire were conquered by the Seljuk Turks towards the 1070s-1080s, but were then retaken by the Georgian king David IV. Relations between the two Christian monarchies were then generally peaceful except for the episode of 1204, when Tamar of Georgia took advantage of the Fourth Crusade against Constantinople, and invaded the Black Sea provinces of the empire to help the Komnenos princes to found the Trapezuntine kingdom.